You're stepping over line. You know you are. I'm just telling you right now, put your manners back in.
Hi everyone, Aaron here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to react to an interview Tom Cruise did with Australian journalist Peter Overton. This was an interview Tom did with Peter for 60 Minutes Australia. Other than the interview that Tom did with Matt Lauer where he called him glib and bashed psychiatry and mentioned Brooke Shields, this is the only other major incident that I'm aware of, or at least that I can recall right now, where Tom actually showed his true colors and lost his temper with a reporter. One of the things I find notable about this particular interview is there's a moment at the end when they're wrapping up where Peter is thanking Tom for doing the interview. Tom says, "No, thank you. This was spectacular." Peter's a little thrown off guard. He thinks Tom's being sarcastic. And so there's this interaction where Tom is indicating that he doesn't find anything awkward or unusual about putting someone in their place the way that he did in front of the cameras here. In Tom's world, this is normal behavior. The segment with Tom is 15 minutes long. We won't go through the entire thing. I'll do the parts that I found most interesting and the parts where he's kind of using Scientology coded language and the average person might not know that that's what he's doing. I want to explain those parts. And before we jump into it, let me thank the sponsor of today's video, Dream Realty, which is me. If you're looking to buy or sell a home or property anywhere in the Tampa Bay area and you would like to work with me, just message me at aaron@dreamrealty.com. Now let's jump into it. All right, popping in my earpiece and here we go.
It was precious time with Hollywood's biggest star. An interview with Tom Cruise about his new film, War of the Worlds. But before we sat down, there was an unusual request, an invitation to a session on Scientology. So I went, and then I met him. And that's when I discovered there's another side to Tom Cruise, that when he's angry, the cool man of Hollywood can become downright icy.
All right, quick pause. My opinion is that the reason Tom asks journalists to do some sort of an orientation on the subject of Scientology before talking to them, I think Tom is trying to take away a piece of ammunition that journalists use, which is some people say, or, you know, they represent opinions, but they claim that the opinions are not their own. And I think Tom is trying to change the dynamic so that when he sits down with a journalist, he's holding the journalist personally responsible for the questions that get asked. So that if the journalist asks some scandalous question, Tom can throw it back at them and go, well, you toured it. You saw it with your own eyes. You have firsthand knowledge. I personally think that's what's going on, but who knows? All right, here we go.
There's a saying in Hollywood, name 3 actors who can guarantee you a box office smash. At 42, he's one of the most powerful people in Hollywood, in control of everything and everyone he encounters.
How are you?
Hey, Tom.
Peter, how you been?
Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Long time.
I know.
Yeah, take a
How
seat.
you been?
You're
Where do you
there.
want me to sit?
But today, that famous cruise control will be tested.
I don't know if it's just that my opinion, my perception of Tom has changed because of everything that's happened over the last 10 years with regards to Scientology and everything I've learned about him, that maybe I just see him differently. But the moment he comes on screen, I feel cringy. I know he still has some broad appeal to some segment of the population, but almost everything about how he conducts himself, carries himself, speaks, I just find so inauthentic and transparent and cringy. And I don't know how much of that is him or how much of that is me.
You're stepping over a line now.
Okay.
You're stepping over a line. You know you are. I'm just telling you right now, put your manners back in.
What you're seeing right there is full-blown David Miscavige, except David Miscavige is much more hateful and forceful and vitriolic about the whole thing. But Tom Cruise is doing his best David Miscavige impression right here. That is the way Sea Org members would talk to each other or interact with each other, but with a hell of a lot more force.
Tom Cruise is used to getting what he wants. He was still a child when he first set his sights on Hollywood.
I'm going to fast forward through a bunch of this.
In more than 30 films, he's given us some of the most iconic movie moments of the past 2 decades.
Rain Man is one of my favorite movies.
But off-screen, Cruise has devoted much of his power, influence and substantial wealth to the Church of Scientology. It's a controversial religious philosophy based on the teachings of L. Ron Hubbard. The message struck a chord with the young Cruise at a time when he was struggling with dyslexia.
I had what absolutely they defined as learning disabilities, dyslexia.
That's what you were diagnosed that you had.
Sure, absolutely. That's what they do. They, you've got ADD, ADHD, and you go, what is the solution to that? Well, there isn't a solution. And now today it's take drugs. They actually wanted to put me on drugs. My mother wouldn't let them back then. And then when a friend of mine actually gave me this, it was actually this picture book about suppression, and social and antisocial personalities. And I was like, what is this? They said Scientology. I said, oh, I'm very interested.
So I think this is interesting. My understanding has always been that Tom Cruise's ex-wife, his first wife, Mimi Rogers, was the one that introduced Tom to Scientology. Now, he says here it was a friend that gave it to him. I've never heard any mention of someone other than Mimi Rogers that introduced Tom to Scientology. I've never heard another version of that story. So I kind of wonder if he's saying a friend here because he doesn't want to talk about Mimi Rogers. Mimi Rogers' father was declared a suppressive person. Mimi Rogers is no longer in Scientology. I don't know if she's been officially declared a suppressive person, but this might be Tom not wanting to name check a declared suppressive person in, a major media interview.
And that's when I became a Scientologist, about 20 years ago.
I've done my fair share of celebrity interviews, and often you'll be asked to meet certain requirements, like watch the movie that the star is promoting. But this is something new. Tom Cruise's office has asked me to come to the Scientology Celebrity Center in Los Angeles to embark on a 4-hour crash course in Scientology and what it's all about.
So you have to wonder, was it just a request? Or was it stated as a mandatory requirement?
Why then was it a condition of me talking to you today that I had to
Okay, it was a condition.
spend quite an intense 4.5 hours in the Church of Scientology here in Los Angeles?
Oh, you didn't have to. You could have said no.
But I felt I had to.
Okay. Well, that's how you felt. People are interested.
Okay, Peter missed an opportunity there. He could have pressed Tom. Because I think what Tom was saying there is, well, you could have said no. In other words, you didn't have to have the opportunity to interview me. And then Peter goes, well, I felt I had to. Now, I would have liked to see a follow-up question. Well, Tom, if I had refused, would I still have been able to do this interview? That would have been beautiful to get that on film.
In Scientology. And I find that people wanted to know. They want to know about it.
Would you also agree, though, Tom, that there's a perception out there that it gets bad press? Cult-like secrecy, controlling, and,
the
and you
cult
always
word.
have to defend it.
I don't feel it's ignorance breeds bigotry.
Right.
Breeds racism. Okay. You have been...
How many times do you think Tom practiced that line, either in the mirror or with someone from the president's office at Celebrity Center? I mean, Tom just very quickly tried to connect dots between exposing Scientology abuse and racism. He didn't just pull that out of his ass. That's a practiced line.
Been there and you've seen it for yourself. Okay.
Do you feel discriminated against when people say this is what Scientology is, that you're a bunch on a lunatic fringe or whatever?
Tom's sitting there going, you're not supposed to be asking me these questions.
Does that,
Peter?
Tom?
No one's ever said that to me.
Of course not. You're fucking Tom Cruise. Everyone's kissing your ass and hoping you'll give him a job.
But no, I mean that perception out there.
Yeah, but that's not the perception out there.
So I don't know if Tom lives in such a fucking bubble, so much of his own bubble that he literally doesn't know there's a perception out there, or if he thinks that him being Tom Cruise, the biggest movie star in the world, that if he thinks that him going on a media program like this and saying that's not the perception is designed to help people believe that's not the perception. Like, it's just one of those points where you have to go, do you really believe what you say? Can you really be that stupid, that ignorant, that oblivious? Or are you just putting on an act? And for the most part, I think Tom is just putting on an act.
That is absolutely, maybe from your perspective.
This isn't my personal opinion. I'm just saying, how do you feel about that when people...
Well, how would you feel?
Oh, if it was my faith, I'd feel
Well, not even your own faith.
He didn't even let him answer. He didn't even let him finish answering the question that he asked.
I find that appalling when people who don't know what they're talking about say things like that. I think it's appalling. I think it's appalling that they're still burning synagogues.
Oh, well, here comes the rest of the speech that he practiced earlier in the day at the president's office of the Celebrity Center. I'm sure of it. You know, this is just the age-old trick that everyone who speaks as some sort of a mouthpiece or spokesperson for Scientology does. If any criticism of Scientology is compared to criticism of the Jewish people, criticism of black people, anything they can do to ally themselves with some marginalized group, that's the go-to Scientology playbook. Never mind the fact that Scientology is populated by 99% wealthy white people. I mean, they do not miss a beat in trying to compare themselves to marginalized groups.
In France, I think it's appalling how certain Muslims are being treated. I think it's absolutely appalling when we talk about freedom of speech and human rights. I think it's appalling that they electric shock people. I think it's appalling that they drug children. I think it's appalling that they say that there are no solutions for those things.
Who says there's no solutions to the world's problems? L. Ron Hubbard tells Scientologists that all of the major subjects, the humanities, the sciences are all predicated on the fact that nothing can be done about it. This is a worldview that is completely not a reflection of the world as it really is.
I think it's appalling that people have to live a life of drug addiction, okay, when I have personally helped people get off drugs.
It's obvious Tom Cruise is a passionate man.
Your family life was difficult. You're estranged from your father, and your mum and dad were divorced. Has that had an impact on you as a dad, how you bring up your children?
Do you have children?
I'm hoping to.
It's so cringy.
I hope I can.
Good.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, absolutely. I've got a great mother and very close family, and it's something that I always wanted to be a father. You know, and I think that one of the great things that we've done with our children is allowing them to be themselves.
Is that hard to give them a perspective that they are like the kids down the road, even though their parents are who you are?
Here's the point: everybody's different, Peter. I don't buy into this whole thing of being normal. There's no.
Do you see how Tom's trying to make it so personal? Like, I think Peter's actually doing an excellent job here. I think his questions are great. Tom is making it so weird.
Such thing as normal. When you really look at someone's life and you look into their life, everyone has a story.
Yeah.
Everyone has something that is going on.
Yeah, not everyone is one of the most famous, people in the world. Like, just answer the fucking question, dude.
That is very unique to them. So that, with regards to our children, it's, I think they feel very fortunate.
Is this a trick question? Is this a hard question?
The life they have, and they're really good people. I'm really proud of them.
Of course, the Cruise children are Australian citizens and spend much of their time here with their mother, Nicole Kidman. But it was when our conversation turned to Nicole that the cool man of Hollywood turned icy.
Now, Nicole.
Now, here's the territory that Peter's about to stumble onto that he doesn't realize he's stumbling onto it. He has no idea that Scientology has told Nicole's kids that she is a suppressive person. He has no idea that Scientology views the fact that Nicole's father is either a psychiatrist or a psychologist as, what you might call in another religion as being a mortal sin. Like, psychiatrists and psychologists in Scientology are viewed as the pure representation and epitome of evil. And Scientology tried to turn Nicole's kids against her. And even though Nicole is a presence in her kids' lives, it's not true to the best of my knowledge that her kids have disconnected from her. There has been a massive rift driven between Tom and Nicole by David Miscavige and Scientology. So whereas Peter might be approaching this line of questioning just from inquiring about the dynamics of a divorced couple, what he's not entirely aware of is the role Scientology has played in the divorce and in the family dynamic after the divorce. Or maybe Peter is aware of this and he's stumbling into this territory anyway.
When you were married, it was like you were an adopted part of Australia. Do you still have a connection to Australia?
Yeah, well, my children are Australian. Absolutely.
I can tell Tom is uncomfortable. He knows something's coming.
I have a lot of friends in Australia. I love Australia.
Was Nicole the love of your life?
What do you mean, Peter?
You were married for 10 years.
Listen, we raised children. How do you answer
struggling.
that? How do you answer?
This is not a difficult question. You can answer this question very politely. You know, it's like these are not hardball questions.
Answer that question. She's someone that I plan on getting married again.
He doesn't want to be too complimentary of Nicole because it'll get him in trouble with his friend David Miscavige. But he doesn't want to shit on Nicole either because that's a very poor thing to do and in poor taste. So that's why Tom's acting like this is tough. It's not tough if you are just a normal fucking person.
You do?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
And having kids?
absolutely.
But Nicole was a major part of your life and the
Oh,
love
awkward.
of your life at the time.
I loved Nick very much. There's no question.
Would you like Nicole to remarry?
Yes. I want Nicole to be happy. That's what I want.
And do you have a relationship where you talk, it's a parenting relationship, and talk professionally about each other's work?
Listen, here's the thing, Peter.
Yeah.
You're stepping over a line now. You're stepping over a line. You know you are.
I suppose they're questions though,
Peter.
that people want to know.
Peter, you want to know. Take responsibility for what you want to know. Don't.
Now, that's not fair. Tom has been dealing with the press for his entire life. And this strategy of trying to personally attack a reporter for asking the question, you would think Tom would have much more media savvy than to do something like that. But the thing is, at the time this interview was recorded, which was 2005, it's not that what he's doing now is bad strategy that he's failed to unlearn. This was new strategy. This is media strategy as advised by Scientology and David Miscavige. Don't let these reporters off the hook acting like they're speaking for everyone. Hold them accountable for speaking for themselves. And that's what we're seeing here.
Don't say what other people. This is a conversation that I'm having with you right now.
You're right.
Okay. So I'm just telling you right now. Okay? Just put your manners back in.
Do you think I was out of line?
Yes, absolutely.
Well,
Put your manners back in. The words I've mentioned before, Scientology redefines words and uses words in special ways. And it might seem silly, but the words in and the words out have special usages in Scientology. And in Scientology, the term out manners is actually a term that's used in the Sea organization. Out manners, out ethics, out responsibility. Out means something that should be there and isn't, something that should be being done and isn't being done, and in is just used in the absolute opposite way. So in Scientology, if someone is being ethical, they'd be described as having their ethics in or being in ethics. For those of you watching, please let me know in the comments down below. This phrase that Tom used, put your manners back in. When you hear that, does that strike you as a very weird way of speaking? It's definitely a Scientology way of speaking. What I'm not sure is that a way of speaking that sounds normal in the real world? Because I don't. As soon as I saw this, I was like, oh shit, Tom is failing to distinguish between Scientology speak and normal speak, but let me know what you guys think.
Put your manners back in.
do you think I was out of line?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I apologise for that
Good.
sincerely.
Good.
I admired her, and I thought that I wanted to meet her.
All right, I'm
Yeah,
gonna pause
so-
here. I gotta tell you, like, this is one of the reasons I know that this is a poor way of handling the media that Tom has been coached into, not something that he's been failed to be trained out of. Because it would have been such a piece of cake for Tom to just go, you know, look, Nicole is my ex-wife. We co-parent kids together. We wish each other the best. I don't really want to be answering questions about the details about my and Nicole's relationship. It's very private. It doesn't feel appropriate. And I'd really rather just not discuss that. There's a way of just communicating that you're uncomfortable with the line of questioning without sort of taking it out on the reporter and making the reporter feel like he's intentionally done something malicious or dishonest. Always assuming the worst of someone is pretty much how David Miscavige lives. This strategy of assuming Peter was trying to do something malicious and evil, that is something Tom has picked up from Miscavige. I've got no question about it.
Seldom a week goes by when Tom Cruise's private life isn't very publicly displayed.
Tom, does that mean you're going to ask her to marry you? Does that mean you're going to ask her to marry you, Tom?
In this recent appearance on the Oprah Winfrey Show, he openly, and some have said over-enthusiastically, declared his love for new girlfriend Katie Holmes.
That's so bad. It's so bad.
That's how I feel about it.
The moment that turned Tom Cruise into a joke. I remember when this happened. I couldn't believe it.
Believe in your role that there is a place where the world does want to know about your personal life and there is a line that you have to draw.
His
Absolutely.
eye just twitched.
I
Let's
know
look at it
people are
again.
Personal life, and there is a line that you have to draw.
Absolutely. I mean, I know people are interested. I don't have a problem with that. And I
If you know people are interested, then why did you just make Peter feel like an asshole earlier for saying it was other people who were interested?
also don't have a problem to say, hey, listen, you know, where I am with Nick is in a great place. I don't mind answering questions, but there's a way of phrasing something that's polite and has manners and things.
There is nothing wrong with how Peter phrased his question. He didn't imply anything. He didn't insinuate anything. I don't know what he's talking about.
Things that I say, you know what, I wouldn't answer that to someone coming up to me at a party.
Yeah.
I have no problem. Of course I know people want to know about my life.
But when I read so much about you, Tom, these are questions you answer.
Peter, you want to waste your time on this right
Oh, I
now?
don't.
Or do you want to ask some other questions?
20 years' time, where will Tom
Peter,
Cruise?
good. You want to move on? Peter, come on. Let's go, man.
And so we did.
Okay, so here's the wrap up.
Tom, thank you.
Peter, thanks, man.
What I'd call an interesting interview.
Thanks, pal. It was terrific. Man. Thank you. Thank you.
It was terrific. God,
I thought it was terrific.
even after you told me to learn some manners.
That's all right. You stepped out of line. I whacked you. We got on with it.
Good on you.
You stepped out of line, I whacked you, and we got on with it. That reminds me a bit of David Miscavige, except after David Miscavige whacks you, you go to the RPF. Let's see if there's anything else.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, well, that's it. Well, the perception of Tom Cruise has never been the same since he did this War of the Worlds media blitz, and I don't recall whether his interview with Matt Lauer was before this one or after this, but I'll probably do a reaction video to that as well. I remember the reaction to this interview as well as the Matt Lauer interview within Scientology was actually very positive. Scientologists don't like the media, they don't trust the media, they feel the media has not been good and kind and fair to Scientology, and they were just thrilled to see one of their own putting in ethics on the media and actually backing them off. That's one of the things I sort of regretted watching, well, both the Matt Lauer interview and this Peter interview, is that they did back off. So in the example of Matt Lauer, he was trying to push Tom on whether anyone had ever been helped by any psychotropic drugs ever. Tom was being very belligerent about this, and instead of continuing to make his point, Matt Lauer immediately retreated into, it's very impressive to listen to you. You definitely know what you're talking about. Didn't seem like have a whole lot of journalistic integrity in that interaction with Tom. I thought Peter did a better job, but even here, Tom did succeed in backing him off. And I guess maybe it's fair to say that to some extent, the job of these journalists is to serve as a conduit between getting information from the subject of the interview to the people at large. They're not there to be, you know, some sort of a prosecutor or a district attorney, so I can't really hold it against them. But it would be nice to see an interviewer actually hold Tom's feet to the fire, not in an aggressive or a rude way, but just in a persistent and accurate way. That would really be a breath of fresh air. All right, that's all I've got for now. Thank you to everyone who watches until the very end, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.